the only way that I can do this, the only way that I can occupy the position 24/7, 365 is to go virtual. And this is the merger between, as I said earlier in previous videos, physical social nexus and virtual social nexus, such that we have this integration of the virtual social and the real sort of physical social as our true sense of power. So what ends up happening, right? That's been all sort of super theoretical. I'm going to give you an example that I think is hopefully clear. So we have, let's say, Oakland as our example, right? And we have public space. And we recognize that the whole idea of the Occupy movement is to do just that. The whole idea of the Occupy movement is to occupy public space. Public space is for whom? Public space is for we the people. Okay, so we occupy public space, and let's say part of this public space, here's the government center, right? Or the bank. And we want to be symbolic in our occupation, so we want to occupy space near sort of the government center of the bank, right? So that when you go to work, when you go to the bank, you have to see us occupying that public space. Now, insofar as we occupy that public space, and that space is given, it's very important that you recognize this, right? That space is given to protesters to occupy. When I went to Miami, it was skirted basically on all sides by Miami police, which, you know, I think has it's you know, you never know who you're going to get, right? Somebody might come out there with malicious intent. The authorities, I'm not saying that the authorities shouldn't be at the Occupy, as everybody says the authorities are part of the 99%, sure. But what ends up happening is the occupation of this public space is given with what? And this is what's important, right? Remember, he says, where is it? Intentional. Power relations are both intentional and non-subjective. We have a space right here. The space itself is non-subjective. It's just space. The space is given by the authorities, right, to the public. It's given to the authorities with the intent of occupation. It is given with the intent to occupy. However, insofar as is given with the intent to occupy, there isn't a problem, there isn't a conflict, and I do conflict resolution for a profession, there isn't a conflict between the authorities and the occupants insofar as the occupation itself falls within the intent of those who have power. I'll say that again. That's very important. We are talking about a non-subjectified, depersonalized space, not in the psychological depersonalization, non-personal, non-subjective. Space as empty space, public space, for whom? For we the people. That space is given from those who have power, insofar as you have to file petitions and, what's it called? Petitions and, you need to, basically paperwork, I forget the name. You have to file, it's not a petition, you have to file a, oh my goodness, it's driving me crazy. Petition. Permit. You have to file a permit, right? Insofar as you have to file a permit in order to occupy the space, you are asking those in power, for the permission, right? For them to allow, to intend you to occupy that space. Insofar as your occupation falls within the intent to occupy as given by those in power, as allowed by those in power, then your occupation is fine. The instance, and this is what happened in Oakland, and this is what's going to happen more frequently, the instance your occupation falls outside of the allowed time, to keep it simple, right? We say that you can occupy between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and this is the duration that those in power have said that you can occupy. There's time before and time after. If you come before, or if you stay after, your occupation of this space is not within the intent that will be allowed by those who have power. And this is where the problem lies, right? The problem lies exactly at this point, and this is not a small problem at all. Because there is a sense in which, and I'll end the lecture series with Martin Luther King's, one of Martin Luther King's amazing accounts of sort of civil disobedience, right? And I don't want to jump ahead because it has to do with something that I'm going to end the lecture series with. But insofar as the law says that here is the acceptable time of occupation on this particular land that we've reserved for occupiers, insofar as there is agreement, insofar as there is adaptations made, insofar as there is an obedience, to be technical, to this allotted time range, to this allotted time frame, to this allotted segment of land, well, you have to recognize that the actual act of occupation is itself being regulated, right? It is itself being regulated. So the nexus of force relations, right? The nexus of force relations is itself influenced by, let's say, the authorities. The nexus of force relations is itself influenced by the authorities. And the whole point is, in the Occupy movement, the whole point is, and I'm not here to tell anyone to break the law, right? That's not my point here. My point is for you to watch the videos, make your own interpretations, make your own interpretations at your own risk, right? Make sure you understand that. Make your own interpretations at your own risk. But the point is, insofar as we're talking about power and a challenge to power, if the power is, the 1%, banks, big banks, the government, those in control, those who have authority, whoever it is, and for various individuals within the Occupy movement, it's all of the above, or one of the above, or two of the above, right? Because we recognize that there's a very heterogeneous population of people, different people that occupy the occupation movement itself. You have to recognize that insofar as you, and this is just Foucault, right? It's just amazing how much it applies to this lecture. Insofar as you ask for power, a transference of power by those in power, as Foucault says here, and it's very important that you recognize, rather they are imbued through and through with calculation. There is no power that is not exercised without a series of aims and objectives. There is no power that is exercised without a series of aims and objectives. So the point is, insofar as permits are placed, insofar as petitions are filed, insofar as requests are made, you are asking for those in power to exercise their power for our benefit. If it's the case that insofar as we occupy that area within that amount of time, that occupation is going to then challenge the power of those in power, why in the world would you think they would really want you to occupy? Which leads me to the final depth. And the final depth of this segment, number 4, which I think is extremely important, is what does it really mean to occupy? I'm not going to answer that because, there's a fine line between being just a good lecturer and sort of crossing the line. And I'm an academic. I want to teeter right on the line. And I think at this point in the lecture series, I'm on that line. And there's a lot of people who don't like what I'm saying. And they've been very clear as to they don't like my lecture series at all. At all. They don't like it. But, I mean, what are you going to do? It's a whiteboard and some markers, right? If this is the threat, if this is threatening, then we are, as a global society, a lot weaker than I thought we were.